The wind did not howl. It screamed. It tore across the white emptiness of Ice Age Europe, carrying shards of snow like knives. Trees groaned under the weight of frost, their branches snapping in the silence after each gust. To survive here was not to live, it was to endure. And for thousands of years, the ones who endured were the Neanderthals. Their bodies told the story of their world. Broad chests to hold heat, heavy limbs to drive spears into thick hides, faces carved by ice and smoke, with eyes that burned like embers against the cold. They were not fragile. They were not weak. They were the Earth's answer to a land that wanted everything dead. Inside a cave tucked against a frozen hillside, a clan huddled close to fire. Shadows rippled across the walls, flickering against ochre handprints left by those before them. Children pressed against mothers, soot-streaked and wide-eyed. The fire hissed, the smell of marrow and smoke mixing into a single memory. Outside, the snow fell relentless, but here was warmth, here was life. At the fire's edge sat Drek, the hunter, his shoulders curved like stone under animal skins, his hands scarred from years of hunts. He sharpened a spearhead, bone scraping bone, each stroke a rhythm older than memory. Across from him, his sister Nara fed dried grass to the flames, her face painted with lines of ash. Not art, but ritual. Every breath, every gesture carried the weight of survival. They did not speak often. Words were precious, like food or fire, used only when necessary. But their silence was not emptiness. It was bond. Every glance, every grunt, every touch of hand to shoulder spoke the language of blood and trust. For generations, the Neanderthals had lived this way. They hunted mammoth, faced cave bears, wrestled the land itself, and won. Their world was cruel, but they were crueler still, shaped into survivors by ice and stone. But tonight, something different stirred in the wind. Drek had felt it first while tracking reindeer at dusk, the sense of being followed, not by wolf or lion, but by something that moved upright, deliberate, something that left prints in the snow like his own, but longer, wider, a shadow that mirrored him yet stretched beyond him. He had returned to the cave without speaking, but the thought clung to him like frostbite. In the firelight, he could not shake it. There were others here. Not beasts, not spirits. Others. Nara noticed the way his jaw set, the way his knuckles tightened on the spear. "What hunts you?" she asked, her voice low, rough as gravel. Drek lifted his eyes. For a moment, the flames carved them into hollows of fear. Then he answered, only one word, "Giants." The clan stirred. A child whimpered, silenced quickly by her mother's palm. Giants. It was not a name, but a warning. For weeks, they had seen signs, deeper footprints in the snow, spears of stone left cracked on the plain, smoke rising from distant hills where no Neanderthal clan lived. Whispers carried through the caves spoke of taller ones, with longer strides and sharper eyes. Humans that looked like them, but stretched, alien, strange. The fire spat sparks, as though the land itself agreed. Nara leaned closer to her brother, her voice a whisper. "Are they beasts?" Drek shook his head slowly. "No, they are us. But more." The weight of those words settled over the clan like another layer of snow. Beasts could be hunted. Spirits could be appeased. But what could be done when the rival was flesh, blood, and will, so close to their own? The flames dwindled, shadows thickening along the cave walls. Somewhere beyond, in the darkness of the ice fields, a different fire burned, one not theirs, one belonging to the giants. Smoke curled into the sky, two clans of humanity breathing under the same stars, unaware that their meeting would decide which bloodline carried forward and which would vanish into history. The night closed in. The Neanderthals slept uneasily, clutching their children, clutching their spears. And outside, the giants moved closer. The land was no longer theirs alone. The hunt had begun. The morning came not with light, but with gray. The sun struggled against the clouds, throwing only a weak shimmer across the frozen plains. Breath rose in white plumes as the Neanderthals prepared to hunt. Hunger gnawed sharper than the wind. Drek led the way, spear balanced across his shoulder, Nara close behind. Their clan moved with the discipline of necessity. No wasted steps, no wasted words. Each child, each elder, each weapon had its place. They were not wanderers, they were a pack. And every hunt was a wager. Meat for survival, blood for memory. The snow crunched beneath their feet, muffling the earth. Reindeer tracks cut fresh lines across the frost, and Drek's eyes narrowed, reading them the way others read stars. He gestured silently. A herd nearby. The hunters fanned out, breath steady, spears poised. They struck with precision. From the shadows of pines, they surged forward, shouting low, guttural cries. Spears thudded into hide, bone cracked, snow-stained red. A reindeer collapsed, its life steaming into the cold air. The kill was swift, merciful. For a moment, triumph pulsed through the clan. Fire and feast would follow. But then Drek froze. Just beyond the dying animal, another set of tracks scored the snow. Not reindeer, not wolf. Human. Long, deep, deliberate. The shape of the toes was like his own, yet stretched, almost distorted. Each stride covered more ground than even he could manage. He crouched, pressing his palm into the imprint. It dwarfed his hand. The others gathered, whispering low, their voices tense. Nara studied the tracks, her breath sharp. The giants, she murmured. Drek scanned the tree line, every sense straining. The air carried a faint tang, smoke. Close. Too close. His pulse hammered. They were not alone in this hunt. The clan dragged the reindeer back to the cave, but their victory tasted thin. Children tore at strips of roasted meat, yet mothers kept glancing toward the cave mouth. Elders sat silent, eyes reflecting flames, as if listening for footsteps beyond the wind. Later, as the fire dwindled, Drek stepped outside. The world glowed under the moon, a silver hush settling over snow and stone. He knelt where the tracks began, his breath rising in pale clouds. The prince led toward the ridge, toward the smoke. And then he saw it. Across the valley, faint but undeniable, a glow flickered against the horizon. Not the stars, not lightning. Fire. Another people. The sight sent a shiver deeper than the cold. The Neanderthals had always thought themselves alone, masters of their caves, rulers of their valleys. But this light mocked that belief. The land had grown crowded. The silence was broken. Behind him, Nara's voice. You saw them. Drek did not turn. I saw their fire. What do they want? He exhaled slowly, frost clouding his face. What we want. Meat. Shelter. The world. Her silence was heavier than words. Together they watched the distant glow, pulsing like a heartbeat against the dark. By morning, the tracks had multiplied. Strangers were moving through the forest, tall, broad-shouldered silhouettes against the dawn. From afar, Drek glimpsed them, hunters unlike any he had seen. Their spears were longer, tipped with stone carved sharper than flint. They wore hides sewn together with precision, and their voices carried across the air, higher, quicker, laced with strange rhythm. The giants. Cro-Magnon. The clan shrank deeper into the forest, their breath caught between fear and fury. The children asked questions their mothers could not answer. The elders muttered of omens, of spirits displaced. Drek said nothing, but his fists tightened around his spear until his knuckles whitened. For the first time, he understood the truth. The land was not infinite. The giants were not passing shadows. They were here to stay, and every fire they lit was a challenge. The snow fell heavier that morning, muting the world in silence. Every branch bowed under the weight. Every step sank deep, erasing its own trace. The Neanderthal clan moved cautiously, dragging bundles of meat and went back toward their cave. Smoke drifted behind them like a trail. But when they reached the ridge, Drek stopped. Across the valley, where the reindeer herds often grazed, the snow was broken. Dozens of tracks crisscrossed the field. Not the deep prints of their own hunt, but longer, straighter, organized lines. And scattered through the white were red stains, frozen into the earth. The herd was gone. The giants had taken it. Drex got twisted. He could see the remains. Bones stripped with precision, hides cut with tools finer than theirs. These were not scavengers. These were hunters who left nothing behind. Behind him, Nara's breath hitched. "They take what we take." Her words cut sharper than the wind. The clan looked to Drek, their leader, their hunter. His jaw clenched. He wanted to roar, to smash the prince into nothing, to reclaim the land with his bare hands. But rage did not fill stomachs. Rage did not keep children warm. Still, hunger pushed them forward. At dusk, the clan moved through the forest, spears ready, searching for signs of game. They found more than they expected. Voices. The sound was strange, rapid, rising and falling like birdsong, yet unmistakably human. Drek crouched low, heart hammering. Through the trees, firelight flickered. He signaled the others to stay back and crept closer, Nara at his side. What they saw froze them. Around a roaring fire stood figures taller than any Neanderthal. Their limbs were longer, their movements fluid. They wore fur stitched into cloaks, tools hanging from belts of sinew. Spears taller than men leaned against logs. And in their hands they held something Neanderthals had never seen. Carved blades of flint, sharp as lightning, glittering in the firelight. The Cro-Magnon, the giants. They laughed as they cooked meat, their voices quick and confident. Children darted between them, playing, their cries high and fearless. It was not the sight of their weapons or height that struck Drek deepest. It was their fire, controlled, confident, burning not just for warmth but for gathering, for sharing. They were not beasts. They were not spirits. They were something worse. Competition. Suddenly, one of the giants turned. His eyes locked with Drek's through the trees. Silence. The man shouted, a sound both foreign and familiar, and the camp stirred. Spears lifted. Flames danced against stone tips. Drek pulled Nara back, but it was too late. The giants surged forward, fast, organized, moving like a tide. The first spear struck a tree near Drek's head. Splinters stung his cheek. He roared, the sound raw, guttural, and hurled his own weapon. It clattered against stone, harmless. Then they clashed. The snow erupted under pounding feet. Spears thrust, screams tore the air. One of Drek's hunters fell, blood pouring into white drifts. Nara swung her weapon, striking a giant's arm, but he barely flinched, knocking her aside with a backhand blow. For every strike the Neanderthals gave, the giants gave too. They moved in patterns, covering, surrounding, hurting like wolves. Drek fought savagely, muscle straining, rage pouring through every strike. But the giants fought with something more dangerous: strategy. The fight ended as suddenly as it began. Two Neanderthals lay in the snow, lifeless. The rest staggered back, clutching wounds, dragging the fallen. The Cro-Magnon did not pursue. They stood at the edge of the firelight, tall and silent, their eyes burning with warning. Drek met their gaze across the clearing. For a moment, time froze. Two kinds of human, staring into a mirror warped by evolution. One destined to rise, one already beginning to fade. The Neanderthals retreated into the trees. The giants did not follow. Back at the cave, silence swallowed the clan. Children wept. Mothers held them close. The fire hissed, mocking. Nara pressed her forehead to Drek's shoulder, voice trembling. They're not beasts. They are not like us. Drek closed his eyes, tasting blood in his mouth, smoke in his lungs. No, he whispered. They are worse. The truth had arrived with blood in the snow. Survival was no longer about enduring the land. It was about surviving them. The snow would not stop. It pressed down on the world like a shroud, smothering the trees, swallowing tracks, hiding prey. Days blurred into gray, silence, broken only by the cries of ravens circling above the dead. Inside the cave, the Neanderthals' fire burned low, each flame a fragile thread against the cold. The children coughed in their sleep. Mothers chewed strips of old hide, softening it before pressing it into tiny mouths. Hunger hollowed eyes, carved shadows into faces. The reindeer kill was gone, the forest empty. And every time Drek looked at the horizon, he saw not herds, but smoke. The giant smoke, curling bold into the sky as if to claim the land itself. Fear had become a second fire inside the cave, spreading wordlessly from heart to heart. It was not fear of the cold, or of wolves, or of lions. It was fear of men. Nara watched her brother sharpen his spear until his knuckles split. His silence was heavier than any words. At last, she whispered, "We cannot outfight them." Drek did not look up. "We must. They are many. Then we will be more." Her eyes stung with tears, but she held them back. "We are fewer every day." For a long time, the only sound was stone grinding against bone. Finally, Drek set the spear aside, his breath clouding. "If we do nothing, the snow buries us. If we fight, maybe it buries them." The clan listened, their faces half lit by the dying fire. None spoke, but the truth knotted all of them. They could not hunt without meeting giants. They could not eat without taking from the same herds. To live meant to fight. The decision came with the morning. They tracked the reindeer herd through the pines, moving silently, every muscle taut. But when they reached the clearing, they found what Drek had feared. The herd was already ringed in flame. The giants had driven them with fire, herding the animals into a trap, spears flashing in perfect rhythm. The Neanderthals crouched in the shadows, watching, their mouths dry, stomachs twisting. The Cro-Magnons killed with precision, no animal wasted, no move uncertain. It was not a hunt. It was domination. One of the younger hunters growled low, lifting his spear. Hunger and rage made him reckless. Before Drek could stop him, the man hurled it. The weapon struck a reindeer, not a giant. But the cry cut through the clearing like thunder. Every Cro-Magnon head turned. The forest erupted. Giants surged into the trees, taller than shadows, their firebrands hissing, their voices sharp. Spears rained through branches. A Neanderthal screamed, clutching his leg where stone had split flesh. Another fell under the weight of two giants, their blades flashing quick as lightning. Drek roared, shoving his hunters back. He fought like a beast cornered, his spear breaking through one man's hide, but another blow struck his ribs, sending him to the ground. Nara dragged him away, her own arms trembling under his weight. The clan scattered, vanishing into the forest's frozen maze, leaving blood in the snow behind them. When at last they stumbled into their cave, the fire was nearly gone. The wounded groaned, children sobbed, elders sat hollow-eyed. Drek lay against the stone, his breath ragged, blood soaking his furs. He stared at the roof, his chest heaving. "They are too many," Nara whispered, voice shaking. Drek's eyes burned, fury fighting despair. "No, they're not gods. They bleed. I saw it. But so do we," she said. The fire hissed, collapsing into embers. Shadows climbed the walls, black and endless. In the silence, every soul felt the same dread. The giants were not leaving. They would come again. And the land had no room for two kinds of man. The fire snapped, throwing sparks like stars. Drek's whisper carried through the dark. "Then we will burn the land before we give it away." The storm came without warning. Snow whipped across the valley in sheets, turning the world into a blur of white. Trees bent under the weight, branches cracking like bones. In the chaos of wind and frost, the Neanderthals moved, wounded, starving, desperate. They had tracked the giants for 2 days, following the columns of smoke that rose against the sky. Drek led them, ribs bound with hide, his breath ragged. Hunger gnawed his belly, but rage drove his feet. He could not sleep without seeing the giants' faces, tall, unbroken, unafraid. Each memory was a wound. Each step forward was a vow. The clan reached a frozen ravine, a narrow throat of stone lined with jagged rocks. There, in the storm's howl, they saw fire. The Cro-Magnons camped within, their flames steady despite the wind. Hides stretched into shelters. Meat hung drying over smoke. Children laughed, voices rising above the blizzard. Drek's hand clenched his spear until his knuckles split. "Now," he growled. The Neanderthals surged forward. Their roars tore through the storm. Spears arced through the snow, striking into the camp. A Cro-Magnon stumbled, blood streaking his cloak. For the first time, the giants faltered. But not for long. The Cro-Magnons moved as one. Spears lifted, shields of wood and hide locked together. They did not scatter like prey. They tightened, closing ranks, answering chaos with order. The clash was thunder. Neanderthals slammed into the line, raw muscle against precision. Drek drove his spear into a man's chest, feeling the crunch of bone, the hot spray of blood. Nara swung her club, breaking a giant's arm. For a heartbeat, it seemed possible. The giants bled, they fell, they screamed. But then the tide turned. Stone blades cut deeper than bone. Spears longer than any Neanderthals reached before they could strike. Every time one fell, two giants pressed forward. Their cries were not of fear but fury, shouted in rhythm, binding them into a single beast with many arms. The snow ran red. A young hunter fell to his knees, a spear through his gut. Another was dragged down, his throat torn open. Nara fought beside her brother until her arms shook, until blood froze in her hair. Drek stumbled, a stone point slicing across his ribs, and still he roared, driving forward with all that remained. For a moment, the world narrowed to him and one giant. Their eyes locked through the storm. The Cro-Magnon was taller, stronger, his spear tipped with glittering stone. Yet Drek lunged, slamming his weight forward, knocking them both into the snow. They rolled, snarling, two kinds of man locked in one fate. The giant's blade cut deep into Drek's side. Drek's spear shattered against stone. With his last strength, he seized a rock and brought it down again and again until the snow turned black. The Cro-Magnon fell still. Drek staggered up, blood pouring from his own wounds, breath burning like fire. He looked across the ravine. His clan lay broken. Their cries had faded. Only Nara still stood, dragging herself toward him, her face pale, eyes hollow. Behind her, the giants regrouped, their fire unbroken, their line unshaken. Drek knew then, this was not a battle. It was an ending. He pressed his forehead to Nara's, their breaths clouding together. "Keep the fire," he whispered. Her tears froze against his skin. "And you, I'm already gone." The giants closed in, voices rising, weapons glinting. Drek lifted his broken spear, his roar echoing through the storm one final time. When the wind carried silence again, only one fire remained in the ravine. The giant's fire, burning steady against the snow. The storm passed. The sky cleared into a silence too heavy to bear. Across the white ravine, the snow lay broken, streaked with the dark stains of blood. The bodies of the Neanderthals rested where they had fallen, their shapes already softening under the drift of ice. Only the smoke of the giants rose into the sky. Nara crouched in the shadow of a boulder, her body trembling, her hands pressed against the wound at her side. She had crawled there when Drek fell, hiding from the giants' eyes. They had not searched for her. Perhaps they thought all were dead. Perhaps one more shadow meant nothing. She could still see her brother's body, half buried in the snow, his broken spear clutched in his hand. His face was turned upward, eyes open to a sky that gave no answer. The memory of his roar still rang in her bones, not of defeat, but of defiance. The giants moved with efficiency. They dragged their dead aside, tended wounds, stoked their fire higher. Children clung to mothers, not with fear, but with certainty. Their voices rose like birdsong, strange and bright. They had survived the storm, survived the clash. Their fire burned steady, defiant against the night. And Nara understood. The land would not remember her clan. Their handprints on the cave walls would fade. Their bones would be buried by snow, scattered by wolves. The Neanderthals had been strong, fierce, unyielding. But strength alone could not claim the future. The giants carried something else, vision, strategy, a fire that belonged not to the moment, but to tomorrow. Tears froze on her lashes as she whispered to the night, "We lived as the land, but they live as the sky." She closed her eyes, pressing her palm to the earth, feeling the pulse of cold beneath her skin. This had been their world, carved with their blood. She felt no shame in its loss. only sorrow. From the ridge, she watched the giants depart at dawn. They carried spears and hides, their voices rising in rhythm as they moved together. They left behind a blaze of fire that still smoldered, a mark of their passage that the snow could not swallow. Nara waited until the valley was empty. Then, with the last of her strength, she crawled to her brother's side. She placed her hand over his, closing his fingers around the broken spear. Her forehead touched his once more, and for a moment the cave fires, the laughter of children, the bond of her people burned inside her again. When the wind rose, it carried her breath with it, soft as ash. The snow buried them both. And in the centuries to come, only one kind of fire walked the earth. The giants, the Cro-Magnon, us. The land did not mourn. The land did not choose. But somewhere in its silence, in the caves, in the bones beneath the soil, a whisper remained. We were here. We lived. We fought. The land remembers.